In 1954, just a year before his passing, Albert Einstein sat at his desk in Princeton and penned a letter. A letter that was never meant to see the light of day. A letter that reveals what he truly thought about God, religion, and the meaning of existence. For over 50 years, this letter remained hidden, locked away, suppressed. And when it finally surfaced, it was sold for nearly $3 million. $3 million. For a letter that was only a page and a half long. Why would anyone pay that much for a piece of paper? What did Einstein write that made it so valuable? The answer will shock you. Because this letter contradicts almost everything you've ever heard about Einstein's beliefs. And it contradicts what Einstein himself said publicly for decades. Today, you're going to uncover the truth that they tried to hide. Let's start with what you probably already know. Einstein said he believed in Spinoza's God, that he saw harmony in the universe, that he had a cosmic religious feeling, that he was not an atheist. All of this is true. Einstein said all these things, in public, in interviews, in articles. But what did he write in private? What did he reveal when he thought no one else would ever read it? Something completely different. On January 3, 1954, Einstein received a book from a philosopher named Eric Gutkind. The book was called Choose Life: The Biblical Call to Revolt. Gutkind was a Jewish thinker who blended philosophy, Kabbalah, and mysticism. Einstein read the book, and it irritated him, so he grabbed a pen and wrote a response. A response that was never intended for the public eye, a response that was brutally honest. The word God, Einstein wrote, is nothing more than the expression and product of human weakness. Pause and absorb that. The man whom the entire world associates with genius and spirituality. The man who said he believed in Spinoza's God. That man called the idea of God a product of human weakness. But Einstein didn't stop there. The Bible, he continued, is a collection of venerable but still primitive legends. Primitive. The greatest genius of the 20th century called the sacred scriptures primitive. And what about the Jewish religion specifically? Einstein was even more direct. For me, the Jewish religion, like all other religions, is an incarnation of the most childish superstition. Childish superstition. Those were Einstein's exact words, not in a philosophical debate, not in a carefully crafted interview, but in a private letter, written to a fellow philosopher a year before his death. Now, do you understand why this letter was worth $3 million? And the context makes it even more powerful. Einstein was 74 years old when he wrote this. He was ill. He knew he had limited time left. And in that moment, when most people turned to faith for comfort, Einstein did the opposite. He rejected it all. He called it weakness. He called it superstition. This wasn't some young rebel trying to shock people. This was a man at the end of his life, looking back and declaring what he really thought. No filters, no diplomacy, no fear of consequences. And the letter was almost lost forever. After Gutkind passed away, the letter went to his widow, then to his daughter, and it sat there, forgotten, for decades. No one knew what was inside. No one imagined that this yellowed piece of paper contained the most honest declaration Einstein ever made about God. It was only in 2008 that the letter finally emerged, more than 50 years after it was written. 50 years in which the world only knew Einstein's public persona, the carefully constructed version, the version that pleased everyone. But wait, it gets even more revealing. Einstein also wrote about the Jewish people, to whom he said he gladly belonged. But even here, his honesty was cutting. The Jewish people, according to Einstein, have no quality different from all other people. In my experience, they are also no better than other human groups. He acknowledged that Jews were protected from the worst excesses only by a lack of power. An extraordinarily raw observation for a man who fled Nazi Germany. And about the idea of a chosen people? Einstein was categorical. I cannot see anything chosen about them. This is the same person who publicly expressed deep pride in his Jewish heritage. The same person who supported the creation of Israel. The same person who was invited to be the second president of Israel and turned it down. And here's something that most people don't know. When David Ben-Gurion, the Prime Minister of Israel, offered Einstein the presidency in 1952, Einstein refused. The official reason was that he had no experience dealing with people and performing official functions. But the private letters suggest something else. Einstein wasn't comfortable with nationalism, not even Jewish nationalism. In his words, he didn't see anything special about any people, not even his own. Imagine the scandal if this view had been public at the time. In 1952, only 4 years after the creation of Israel, at a time when Jews around the world were celebrating the new state, Einstein, the most famous Jew in the world, saying in private that he didn't see anything chosen about his people. Do you see the contradiction in public? Einstein was cautious and diplomatic. He knew that every word he uttered would be analyzed, interpreted, used. He was the most famous person on the planet. Any statement about religion would cause shockwaves, so he spoke in vague terms: cosmic religious feeling, Spinoza's God, harmony of the universe. Words that could mean almost anything. Words that both religious people and atheists could interpret in their favor. But in private, Einstein was brutal. And the letter to Gutkind wasn't the only one. In 1953, a year before the Gutkind letter, Einstein received a question from a Baptist pastor. She wanted to know if Einstein was certain he would attain eternal life with the Creator. Einstein's response was devastating. "I do not believe in the immortality of the individual," he wrote, "and I consider ethics to be an exclusively human concern, with no supernatural authority behind it. No supernatural authority, no afterlife, no personal God watching over us." But wait, didn't Einstein say he wasn't an atheist? How do we reconcile this? The answer reveals something profound about how Einstein thought, and about how the academic and religious world tried to capture him for their own narratives. Einstein rejected militant atheism. He thought atheists were just as dogmatic as religious people. He once said that he got angry when atheists quoted him to support their views. But rejecting militant atheism isn't the same as believing in God. Einstein occupied a complex territory, a territory that neither side wanted to acknowledge. He believed in something he called cosmic religious feeling, a sense of wonder at the order of the universe, a reverence for the mathematical structure of reality. But that's not God. It's not religion. It's not spirituality in the sense that most people understand. It's a philosophical position, a position that Einstein articulated clearly in a famous 1930 essay, published in the New York Times Magazine. In that essay, Einstein described 3 stages of religious experience. The first is based on fear. Primitive people fear nature and invent gods to explain it and appease it. The second is based on social morality. People want love, support, justice. So they create a God who cares about them, who rewards good and punishes evil. But the third stage, Einstein said, is different. It's the cosmic religious feeling, a sense of awe at the order and harmony of the universe, a recognition that there is something larger than us, something that we cannot comprehend completely. This third stage, according to Einstein, has no anthropomorphic concept of God. No God who looks like us, who thinks like us, who cares about our individual lives. The religious geniuses of all ages, Einstein wrote, were distinguished by this kind of religious feeling, which knows no dogma and no God conceived in the image of man. Do you see the subtlety here? Einstein used the word religious in dual but completely redefined what it means. His religion had no prayer. It had no ritual. It had no salvation. It had no afterlife. It had no personal God. It was just admiration, reverence, awe before the cosmic order. And this position put Einstein in conflict with practically everyone. Religious folks wanted him to validate their faith. Atheists wanted him to validate their disbelief. Both selectively quoted him, picking the phrases that served their purposes and ignoring the rest. And Einstein, aware of his fame, generally let both sides think what they wanted. It was easier that way, less controversy, fewer explanations. But in the private letters, the truth emerged, and that raises a question that few want to face. What was the real Einstein? The public man? Or the private man? The answer is more complex than it seems. Einstein was not a hypocrite in the common sense. He wasn't lying in public. He was being strategic. He knew that his words had weight. He knew that any direct statement about religion would cause storms. So he chose his words carefully. He used ambiguous terms. He created phrases that could be interpreted in multiple ways. And he let each group draw their own conclusions. Was it manipulation? Maybe. Was it wisdom? Also, maybe. Einstein was human, and humans are complicated. But the result was that for decades, religious people and atheists fought over Einstein, as if he were a trophy. Each side had their favorite quotes. Each side ignored the inconvenient quotes, and the truth lay buried in private letters that no one could read, until now. Let me tell you about another letter, one that reveals even more about Einstein's mind. In 1950, a man wrote to Einstein. His 11-year-old son had died of polio. The father was devastated, and he wrote to the greatest genius in the world, asking for comfort, asking for some assurance that his son still existed somewhere. Einstein's response was extraordinary, not for what he promised, but for what he refused to promise. A human being, Einstein wrote, is a part of the whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness, optical delusion of consciousness. Einstein was saying that the sensation of being a separate individual is an illusion, that we are all part of a larger whole, that the separation is apparent, not real. And what does that mean for death? Einstein offered no afterlife, no reunion in heaven. He offered a perspective. The striving to free oneself from this delusion, he wrote, is the one issue of true religion. That was Einstein's religion. No salvation, no immortality, but liberation from the illusion of separation, recognition that we are part of something larger. It's a beautiful vision, in a way, but it's radically different from what most religions offer, and it's radically different from what most people want to hear when they're suffering. And in 1955, when Einstein himself faced death, he was consistent. His lifelong friend, Michael Besson, passed away shortly before him. Einstein wrote a letter of condolence to Besson's family, and in that letter, he revealed his final view on death. "Now he has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me," Einstein wrote. "That means nothing. For us convinced physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion, a stubbornly persistent illusion." Einstein offered no afterlife. He offered physics. The idea that time, as we experience it, isn't the fundamental reality. That past, present, and future coexist in some way that we can't perceive directly. It's a fascinating view. It's consistent with certain interpretations of relativity. But it's not traditional religious comfort. It's not the promise of reuniting with loved ones in paradise. And that was the truth that Einstein guarded. The truth that he only revealed in private letters. The truth that some tried to hide. There is yet another letter that deserves attention. In 1921, long before the Gutkind letter, Einstein was already revealing his skepticism in private correspondence. "The mystical trend of our time," he wrote, "which shows itself particularly in the rampant growth of so-called theosophy and spiritualism, is to me nothing but a symptom of weakness and confusion." And he went further. "As our inner experiences consist of reproductions and combinations of sensory impressions, the concept of a soul without a body seems to me to be empty and devoid of meaning." A soul without a body, devoid of meaning. In 1921, Einstein was already rejecting the idea of a spiritual existence separate from the physical body. 33 years before the Gutkind letter, his position was already clear, at least in private, and that consistency is revealing. Einstein didn't change his mind at the end of his life. He always thought this way. He just didn't say it in public. Why hide it? Why suppress these letters? Because Einstein was useful. Useful to religious people who wanted a genius on their side. Useful to atheists who wanted the same. Useful to Jewish people who wanted a hero. Useful to universities who wanted his reputation. Each group had a vested interest in maintaining its own version of Einstein, a version that served their purposes. But what about the private letters? They destroyed these convenient narratives. They revealed an Einstein who was more complex, more contradictory, more human. The Einstein estate, managed by his executors, Helen Dukas and Otto Nathan, was notoriously protective of his image. Lawsuits were filed to prevent the publication of private correspondence. The widow of his son, Hans Albert, tried to publish letter and was blocked in court. Helen Dukas had been Einstein's secretary for decades. She knew him better than almost anyone, and she dedicated the rest of her life to protecting his image. Every letter, every document, every piece of paper that left the Einstein archive passed through her scrutiny. Otto Nathan was similar, an economist by training. He became the legal guardian of Einstein's legacy, and he had very clear ideas about what the world should and should not know together. Dukas and Nathan created a fortress around Einstein's memory. Biographers were carefully selected. Access to documents was rigidly controlled. Anything that could tarnish the image of the genius was suppressed or minimized. It wasn't just the religious views. There were letters about his turbulent marriage, letters about his distant relationship with his children, letters that revealed a human, flawed, complicated Einstein. All of this was kept under wraps. The world only knew the Einstein they wanted to show, the kindly genius, the pacifist, the humanist, the man with disheveled hair and a dreamy gaze, who seemed to personify wisdom. For decades, the public version of Einstein was carefully curated, edited, sanitized. And then, in 2008, the letter to Eric Gutkind appeared at auction. It sold for $400,000. There was shock, controversy, debate. 10 years later, in 2018, the same letter was auctioned again. At Christie's in New York, the estimated value was between $1 and $1.5 million. The final price, $2,900,000, almost $3 million, for a letter that was only a page and a half long. The world finally wanted to know what Einstein really thought, and it was willing to pay a premium for it. The auction was dramatic. Christie's had estimated a value between $1 and $1.5 million, which would already be a record. But what happened exceeded all expectations. Two anonymous buyers battled over the phone for the letter. The battle lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes of increasingly higher bids. The price rose from $1 million to $2 million, then to $2.5 million, and finally stopped at $2,900,000. No one knows who bought it. The buyer remains anonymous to this day, but clearly, for someone, this letter is worth a fortune. This truth about Einstein is worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. And that says something about us, about our obsession with geniuses, about our need to know what they really thought, about the value we place on truth, even when it's inconvenient. Christie's called the letter the most complete expression of Einstein's religious and philosophical views, the most definitive statement in the debate between religion and science. And perhaps it is, because in the privacy of his correspondence, Einstein didn't have to be diplomatic. He didn't have to please anyone. He didn't have to worry about headlines, or interpretations. He could simply be honest. And Einstein's honesty was this: he didn't believe in God. He didn't believe in life after death. He didn't believe in sacred scriptures. He didn't believe in chosen people. He believed in the universe and in order, in mathematics, in the beauty of the cosmic structure. And he thought that was enough, more than enough. He thought that this admiration for the cosmos was the only true religion, the only one that stood up to the scrutiny of reason. It's interesting to compare Einstein with other scientists of his time. Max Planck, the father of quantum physics, was a devout Christian. He believed that science and religion could coexist harmoniously. Werner Heisenberg, another quantum pioneer, was also religious. But Einstein was not. For him, traditional religion was a primitive stage of human thought, something that humanity should overcome, not embrace. This put him in an unusual position. He wasn't religious, but he wasn't a militant atheist either, like Bertrand Russell or Richard Dawkins later on. He occupied a middle ground, a space that few understood and that both sides tried to claim. And perhaps that's why the letters are so valuable, because in them, Einstein didn't have to explain nuances. He didn't have to be diplomatic. He could simply say what he thought. And what he thought was devastatingly clear. You may agree or disagree. You may think Einstein was right or wrong, but now you know what he really thought. Not the edited version, not the convenient version, the truth. And that truth raises an important question. Why do we care so much what Einstein thought about God? Einstein was a physicist, a genius of physics. His authority was over space, time, energy, matter, not over theology, not over the meaning of life, not over what happens after death. But we want geniuses to have answers for everything. We want intelligence in one area to translate into wisdom in all areas. We want authorities to tell us what to think. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of these letters, not what Einstein thought about God, but the fact that he thought for himself. He came to his own conclusions. He refused to accept ready-made answers. He examined religion with the same rigor that he examined physics. And he came to conclusions that satisfied him, even if they didn't satisfy anyone else. You can do the same. You can examine your own beliefs. You can question what you've been taught. You can come to your own conclusions. And perhaps, in the end, that's the true lesson of Einstein. Not his answers, but his questions, his refusal to accept dogmas, his insistence on thinking for himself. There's an interesting detail about Eric Gutkind, the man who received the letter. Gutkind was himself a deep thinker. He studied anthropology, philosophy, mathematics. He was interested in Gnosticism and Kabbalah. He genuinely believed that there was a spiritual dimension to existence that science could not capture. And he admired Einstein. He sent his book hoping, perhaps, to find an ally, a genius, who would validate his mystical view of the world. Instead, he received a total rejection, a ruthless dismantling of everything he believed in. Gutkind never published the letter, perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of shame, perhaps simply because he didn't want others to see the extent to which Einstein had disagreed with him, and so the letter remained hidden, a secret held between two profound thinkers, a truth that the world would take more than half a century to uncover. You've just discovered something that most people will never know, the truth about what Einstein really believed, the truth they tried to conceal for decades, a truth worth $3 million. Channels like this one exist to reveal these truths, to go beyond the convenient narratives, to give you access to information that others would prefer to keep under wraps. When you click the Super Thanks button, you're supporting that mission. You're saying that truth matters more than comfort, that you'd rather know than be protected from reality. And now, the final question. What do you think? Was Einstein right in his private views? Or were his public statements more truthful than his secret letters? Comment letters if you believe the private letters reveal the true Einstein. Comment public if you think his public declarations were more authentic. I want to know your opinion. Because this conversation doesn't end here. It continues in the comments. It continues in your own reflection on what you believe and why. And there's another question that deserves to be asked. If Einstein were alive today, in a world of social media and instant information, could he maintain that separation between his public persona and his private thoughts? Or would he be forced to choose a side? We probably don't know. But we do know that he valued his privacy. He valued the right to think without having to explain himself. He valued the ability to be honest with himself, even when he couldn't be honest with the world at large. And maybe that's another lesson, that we all have a right to private thoughts, that not everything needs to be shared, that the truth sometimes needs protection until the world is ready to hear it. The world took more than 50 years to be ready for Einstein's letter. Now it is, and you are among those who know. And remember, you now know something that most don't. Use that knowledge with wisdom. Thank you for watching until the very end. We'll see you in the next video where we'll continue exploring the secrets that Einstein kept hidden. Until then.